What is up, everybody? It is Kovaz back again with another video, and this time with a dungeon that I do not believe I've done a video on yet this season, and that is a Darkheart Thicket. This key is a couple of weeks old. You can see the affixes in the top right below my map. It's fortified, storming, and bursting right there. And this is a pretty big pull, pretty standard, but especially on fortified, this pull can be pretty dangerous. There are a couple of things you have to watch out for. The cats leaping, if they hit you when another mechanic is going off, it's just going to kill you. The mind-shattered screechers, the two owls, you have to make sure that there is a kick on every one of their casts, or they will disorient someone in the group. You can see us using AoE stops there, and you can see one of the cat jumps that I was just talking about. It hits you, it's like 70% of your health on these higher fortified keys. And then the final thing you have to look out for in this big pull is the Festerhide Grizzly, and it has an AoE cast, and every time it casts, the subsequent casts are going to do more damage. You can see I have 2 stacks of the roar increase on me, and so that's why the Festerhide Grizzly is always going to be your main target on these, and then you hope that everything else just gets cleaved down. That is especially true on bolstering weeks. You do not want everything else to die a long time before the bear. One thing to note is each bear's roars can only stack up to 2 times as far as the debuff goes, so there is a ceiling on how hard it can hit you. But if you do the double bear pull before the first boss, that one can go up to 4 because there are 2 bears shouting at you. So, especially towards the tail end of that pack, and especially if it's bolstering, just make sure you have a defensive when the bear does a roar, and that's all you should really have to look out for. And then just the green circle that goes on people, the Nightmare Toxin, that one's just from the poisoners. That one needs a dispel. It does a lot of damage, and if you have that on you, and you can see that the cats are about to leap, just pop a defensive, because that's going to be hurting you. And if the cat leaps right after that ticks, you're just dead. And it's a really, really bad pull to die on, because it's going to be the pull that you're using all your cooldowns, your damage potion, and you're going to have hero going. And so you really, really don't want to die there. There are a lot of pulls that, you know, if you die, you get unlucky. You know, it's whatever. You release, you run back. It's just a time loss. But that one's going to be huge, because the damage loss, like if I died on that first pull, it would have been, you know, probably 70+ million damage lost. So definitely be looking at defensive usage during every high key that you do. Damage does not matter if you die constantly, right? You could have the potential for the highest overall damage in the world, but if you are a player that just does not press your defensives because you're not aware of when you need to do it, you're going to be stuck at all 27s. You know, you could be absolutely insane when it comes to damage. You could do 30% more than the next highest hunter, but if you can't survive, it doesn't matter. You're going to be 200 IO lower. And then right here, you can see we have 2 ruiners, a poisoner, and a bunch of cats. And so right here, I am focusing down a cat. And the reason for that is the cats leap at fairly similar times, and you just want the cats dead. You could also target the ruiner, because again, the ruiner does the poison, but we have plenty of people to dispel the poison, and we don't really worry about that. You can see right next to the nameplates, you can see all these leaps coming off cooldown pretty close to each other, and so we used some AoE CC there to prevent them from going at the exact time, the exact same time. We let one leap go off, and then we CC'd a little bit so that they were at least a bit staggered. And then you can also see that I used my bear fort because I got multiple things on me at once, and I didn't want to die. And so right here, you can see I got hit. It's a lot of damage, and I had Exil available. I had my Torque available, but my healer life cocooned me, so I want to hold those. You don't want to overlap cooldowns. If 1 is enough to survive, just leave it at the 1. And the healer was quicker on the draw than I was for saving myself. And then here we have another pack with a Screecher. So you just want to make sure that you're communicating, making sure the unnerving Screech there is getting kicked. And then other than that, this pack is really easy. And like I said, the strategy that we have this week, since it's not bolstering, is we just focus down a Nightclaw. Like the Nightclaws die first every time that we can, right? If it is bolstering, it's rough, especially if it's fortified bolstering, because you cannot do that. Every cat that you focus down and kill just makes the other ones hit harder. So if you focus one cat, focus the next cat, focus the next cat, the 3rd and 4th cat are alive and pretty healthy and bolstered, they're just going to one-shot you on the leap. And the whole point is to just avoid the leap damage. So I'm not going to say there's no counterplay on those weeks. It's just, it's harder counterplay because you don't just kill one and don't worry about it. It's track every leap and rotate your defenses perfectly, which is why a lot of people just opt not to play on bolstering weeks. And you know, bolstering, it's a lot better than it was previously. Better meaning from a player experience point of view. It's not gonna break your keys as often. I don't know if you guys played or remember, but bolstering used to also increase mob health and it wouldn't fall off. So now bolstering just makes the mobs hit harder, and each stack has its own duration and it'll fall off. So if you bolster it once early and then, you know, 10 seconds later something dies, those bolstering stacks, while they do stack, they'll fall off separately. So it'll stack 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it'll stack back down 4, 3, 2, 1 as time goes on. But it used to be that bolstering weeks were just impossible on high keys because it also gave mobs a ton of health. And so especially like a dungeon like Everbloom, if they hadn't nerfed bolstering, and bolstering is still awful in Everbloom, it would be impossible because the lashers would die and the caster mobs or the stingers that are in that pack would just have literally boss levels of HP, and it would not fall off until you reset. So you would have to die. And you know, Blizzard has actually done pretty well at balancing a lot of these affixes, but with that said, some affixes are just so much harder than others when it comes to timing keys with them, that a lot of players just choose not to play. And I do not blame them. If you're pushing for IO and it's a fortified bolstering week, you're probably not going to actually gain IO if you did close to your peak the previous week, you know? If you've been getting a lot better week to week to week, absolutely you can still play. But you know, 2 weeks ago, let's say we did really well, we got all 28s, and it's like, okay, you know, we can definitely push some 29s on the easy keys. If we're lucky, we can get a 30, but not with bolstering. Bolstering is just going to put that over the top. And then the same goes with Sanguine, where, you know, if you play it perfectly, there can be 0 Sanguine healing, right? Obviously you can't play it perfectly, and if you, let's say you're doing Murazon's Rise and you're fighting one of the mini bosses, and you know the maiden decides to chain cast right as a mob dies on top of her and it just heals her to full, like it's awful. It's awful. And a lot of people complain about it, and they have their little protests, their riots, by just not playing that week, and I'm with them. I enjoy keys, but I do think that there are certain affixes that the way that they interact with the dungeons just needs to be looked at. But overall, I think Blizzard has done really well, so I don't want to give them too much flack for it. And then here on the first boss, there are pretty much 3 mechanics that you have to look out for. There's the frontal, where he turns into a bear and then charges at the tank, which is why the tank is constantly taking the boss to the edge so that the charge isn't especially long. There's the leap right there, and then he also spawns adds. And so the way the leap works is it will always choose the furthest player out, and then the healer needs to heal you up above 90% health, and until you're above 90% health, there's a dot on you. And so a really, really good thing for that is to have a shield, because if you never even drop below 90% health, you never get the dot. But the leap does hurt. So you can see I have a timer for the leap, and it's so I can be aware that I press defensives if I need to. So right there I use a bear fort. It's because it keeps me healthier. I also tell my pet to heal me, just so I can get above 90%. And then, like I said, the last mechanic is these adds. And you can see right there the timers, my bigwigs. They're called Nightfall. And those spawn on players, so you can see that's why I'm going in and out and in and out and in and out constantly, is because I'm going out to bait the leap, then I'm going in to make sure that the Nightfall spawns near the boss. So you can see right here, ads are about to spawn, so I'm close, and then I move out because there's going to be a leap. And hunters are pretty good for this. Maybe not on high tyrannical keys, because the leap does hurt if you have like a warlock or a mage in your group, something like that. Let them tank it, but we don't lose damage moving around, and there is a lot of movement. So you can see right here, the adds and the charge are going to happen. Those time out at like the same time. It's always going to prioritize the charge. Adds will always be after. You can see here, it's going to be adds and then a leap right after. I could have been further in, but I did not want to risk the the leap going on someone else who's not expecting it, and maybe they get ticked by an ad pool and they just die, right? One other thing to note for the leap, if you're a tank, is the leap has 2 components to it. He leaps to a player, does damage, applies the dot, and then he leaps back to the tank. The one that's on the tank is obviously going to hit harder because it's planning to hit a tank, and so it can't hit like it's an ability for DPS to watch out for, because then it's just tickling the tank. It does nothing, right? But it does not necessarily go on the tank. If the tank moves while that leap is happening, it'll hit like a melee player that's in the same area, and it'll one-shot them like every time. So if you're a tank, whenever the leap is happening, make sure that you stand still, because you will make your melee DPS very unhappy when they're just playing the game, having fun, and they flop instantly. You can see I make 2 mistakes here. I missed my trap on the previous pat that we're trying to skip, which was fine because it timed out well and we just walked through. And then here, when the tank snaps all these blossoms, they lose aggro. And so the way that the tank does that is he stands on that little rock where the moon marker is, and then he can throw stuff through the wall, aggro them. But then since he stands on top of the rock, they don't have a path available to get to him. And so the mobs just snap to the tank. This used to be something that was really common in like all Mythic Plus, and I hated it. It was just you snap every single pull. You know, like every little ledge would snap mobs, and so the tanks were just constantly pulling like massive pulls and then just snap, 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 just to group them up instantly. I personally did not like that gameplay because it was just a knowledge check of how many ledges do I know about in this dungeon that will snap mobs to me. So I'm glad they fixed most of them. There are still some in the game, and this is one of them, but one downside to the snap is he gets on top of the rock to snap them, and then he gets off the rock to get them off the rock. When he gets off the rock to get them off the rock, they drop aggro. And so you can see my pet died at the start of that pull, so I didn't do all that much damage, because I had to res my pet because it got aggro real quick, because it's just constantly beast cleaving. It's just constant AoE damage, and so my pets in those situations are going to be the first ones to die most of the time, which is better than, you know, the shaman having aggro or the rogue having aggro and them getting one shot, but still a pain. So make sure if your tank does that you're keeping an eye on your pet's aggro and you're ready to feign death it. And I honestly pre-mend pet on most of those pulls just because I'll be out of combat. There's no reason not to. This, especially on fortified, is a pretty dangerous pull. It's one that you want to have hero for. I know there's a boss right after it, but you do want to have hero, and it's because you will eventually run out of AoE stops for these channels, and they have a really low cooldown, and they do pretty decent damage. But the important part is if the channel actually finishes on anybody, they get feared. And once one person gets feared, all of their AoE stops are off the table. Usually another person will get feared, and it's just a cascading chain of shit that you want to avoid. So just whenever you can, pop cooldowns, pop hero on these. Make sure that you're still coordinating and not overlapping with your group. Like, don't kick if you know that there's going to be a leg sweep, something like that. But we did pretty well there. But we also have a lot of AoE stops. We have Shaman Capacitor Totem, we have Rogue AoE Blind, we have leg sweep, we have Shaman Knockup, we have just a lot of shields from the Paladin, we have the Paladin's AoE Blind, and, you know, then you have the fucking Hunter that, like, what? You have one kick and then a single target stun. We're kind of useless. So this boss, pretty simple. Again, it's an older boss, and a lot of these bosses aren't especially complicated. It's not like raid bosses where there are going to be a ton of mechanics in different phases, because these are just one small aspect of the dungeon. But especially on high keys, this boss is dangerous. Every stomp that goes out, the Shattered Earth, really hurts. Especially for something like a hunter or a shaman. They really hurt, and on higher keys they will one-shot you. And there's actually a website that I'm going to put in the description of this video, and you can put your character's stats in there, and then you can see if these abilities are going to one-shot you. And so before doing all these high keys, I put my stuff in there so I know what I need to use a defensive on before the key. So right here, I know that as long as I'm close enough to the monk that I get his AoE damage reduction aura before the shatter, I'm good. I'll live with like 3% HP. And this ability does actually have some damage variance to it. It's like plus or minus 2%. And so if it says you live at 1% on the website, you don't necessarily live at 1%. It could be that you live at, 2%, or it could be that it overkills you by a little bit. And so right here, I had a shield. I know I'm not pressing anything, but I'm pretty sure that I survived with 3% from what the website said. So I don't need to use anything on any of these. But if this was 29 instead of a 28, I would have to have a cooldown for every single stomp, and they're happening every 30 seconds. It's a lot of cooldowns to rotate through, which is why hunters are not doing as well in high Mythic Plus, but we're absolutely cranking in like 20s to 25s. It's because we do a lot of damage, but we just can't survive on a lot of these keys. You can see here, like I'm using my cooldowns because I don't need to save them for anything else. I know in the following polls, I want 1 cooldown for each of the sets of ads that die, because they have a death rattle effect that will do a ton of damage since they all die at the same time. But like Bear Fort is useless for that. I want to make sure that I either have Turtle, Survival of the Fittest, or I'm asking for an external. So if I'm playing this correctly, when this boss is close to dead, like right now, for these Shattered Earths, I'm not going to press my Survival of the Fittest, and I'm not going to press my Turtle. We'll see if I am actually playing that correctly and thinking ahead. The only other things on this boss to look out for is the uproot, and that's going to spawn an ad for every single one of these roots that's alive. That can kill your tank when you have so many ads like this. If we're doing correctly in our group right here, since we have a prot pally, he's freedoming me, and I'm running around and getting them, because the way those roots work is when you step on them, they start taking damage, but they root you. So if you're freedomed, you can just run around, collect them all, or if it's like no freedom, you can step in one and disengage out. And that's pretty much it for this boss, or for that boss, as long as you're not standing in front of it getting hit by the breath. And these are the slimes I was talking about that have the death rattle. So when these die, I should pop a defensive. I should pop my, yep, there it is right there. And you can see I take a lot of damage as those are dying. We did pretty well offsetting their deaths, so that the damage wasn't all at once. But in a group that's not as coordinated and they all die at the same time, it is so much damage. Like my 40% wall isn't enough to survive it. I would have to turtle. And so this one, we don't have that many. We're going to see. I don't think I turtle. I think I just try to slip an exil in between the ticks here. Oh, I get a sack, so I don't even have to worry about it. But you can see my health didn't really drop that much, so it would have been fine. And that's another thing you can do, is you can hold a global, and once you hit like 40% HP, you exil, and then you're back up to 70, and let's say you drop back down, you pop a pot in between the ticks. You're just constantly watching your health and making sure that you don't die when all these are going off. And ideally, you do use something like sack in that situation to keep yourself alive, because this boss has another ability that, very similar to Oakheart, it goes frequently. It's the roar, the earth-shattering roar right after the winds that will just about one-shot you. So you need a defensive, especially for high keys on every one of those. So you can see here, I just used my Bear Fort, and it was enough HP gain that I wasn't getting overhealed, and then I wasn't dying. Something I like to do on this boss that we did not do because we were fine on time is there are some bats down below, and you can actually aggro those. You can send your pet down there to pull the bats, and then you do the boss with 4 bats. If you have a rogue in your group, like the rogue can aggro them and then shadow step back up the ledge. If you have a warlock, then your tank can just go down there, aggro the bats, and then just take the gateway back up. Just do be aware that on a lot of higher keys, those bats hurt your tank quite a bit. And as a hunter, the way our beast cleave works is they like the mobs have to be close to your pet, right? So in a situation like this, you can see that my pets are constantly repositioning themselves behind the boss. What that means is when you beast cleave, the mobs are going to be on the tank in front of the boss. Your pets are going to be behind the boss, and if you're beast cleaving, they're not in range to actually cleave the mobs ahead of the boss, right? Which, when the tank is just pulling these little whelplings, like I'm not beast cleaving, and that's because the point of these whelplings is to let our shaman do more funnel damage so we get more single target. And I don't know how, but the tank benefits as well. And then they also make it so that our Mistweaver heals more, because it's more target, so that he can start doing the spinning kick instead of just tiger palming or kicking or whatever it is that Mistweavers do. So the only thing that I'm doing with these whelps is making sure that I'm barb shotting a couple of them so that I have kill command cooldown reduction. But as I was saying, when beast cleaving, we're not going to hit both the boss and the mobs if we're targeting the boss. And so if you do pull the bats into the boss, then you want to actually focus a bat, because you do need the bats to die. They will kill your tank on these higher keys. But if you're main targeting the boss, and the bats are in front of the boss, pets are behind the boss, they're not going to be in range to beast cleave. So it's unfortunate, but we don't lose that much single target by focusing something else. Like our beast cleave, it's like 80% for the pet autos and the kill commands. Just make sure you're keeping a barb shot on the boss when you're targeting a bat so you're not losing damage there, you know, stuff like that. And it's unfortunate because you can reposition your pets temporarily by, you know, mouse over barb trotting something in front of the boss so that it's in range to beast cleave, like main target the boss and beast cleave the ads. But your pets will always automatically reposition off to the side. And it's because they don't want pets, you know, cluttering the front of the boss, and they also don't want pets to get parried, so they just constantly reposition behind. But in situations like this, like Oakheart is a really, really good example of when this is a pain, is because Oakheart has a really big hitbox. Your pets are going to be way back here behind the boss. Those plants have an itty bitty hitbox. They're going to be way up front on the tank, and you're never going to be cleaving the little ads when you're main targeting Oakheart. But those ads also, especially if you don't get a freedom and there are a bunch of the uproots, those ads need to die. They will kill your tank. So don't think of it as padding in certain situations to actually focus the ads instead of the boss. And then this pull, I actually really, really like this pull. It's not so dangerous as long as you're getting stops and everyone is in melee range. And the reason that everyone needs to be in melee range is these stalkers have their shadow hunt ability, or whatever it's called, dark stalk, something like that. You can see that it's off cooldown right here. It's available, but they're not pressing it. And it's because the way that works is it will dash to someone in range, and then it dashes to someone in melee. And if there's no one in range, it just doesn't go. It's not like the Juggernauts in Atoll, where if there's no one out there, they just charge in melee. These ones, as long as everyone is like pretty much pixel stacked in melee, you're never gonna take that hit, which is ideal, especially on high fortified like this. That it hurts a lot, and I think we mess up later here. Maybe my pets get far enough away, or I just sidestep or something, so we have one go off, and you'll see it hits for like 80+% of someone's health, and it can also double tick you, I believe. So you can just get randomly one shot on these packs with the stalkers if the entire group is in melee. So that's a good tip. It makes this dungeon so much easier, especially this last corridor that can be trouble for some people. And then here, since we did pull the pack up top where we just stacked in melee, we don't have to do these, so we're just shrouding past. I like this route a lot more than having to do that pack that we just skipped, because if you do not coordinate your kicks really well, someone's gonna die. Something's gonna go off. We're not gonna have a spell for one of the curses. Something's gonna happen, and it always goes poorly. If you play perfectly, it's fine, but we're all human. We're not going to play perfectly. So, you know, plan around those potential failures and just take the easiest route. Like, let the difficulty come from the key level, not you holding yourself back by not routing optimally. And then we don't pull this into the next pack because we know we have plenty of time and we just don't want to break the key. If you're doing a really high key, you're, well, for one, not watching my video because you're better than me. And for two, you're racing against the timer, and so you're going to pull these together. And so you can see right here, it's another pack with a stalker, and so we're all getting right up in melee, and then we're just making sure that we're getting kicks. I'm watching this imp that's marked star, and when it's communicated that we're not going to have something for one of its things that's not a firebolt, I'm going to kick it. Firebolts are just going on the tank. You can see up above my focus, you can see my target's target, and it's on the tank. And right here is what I was talking about that I was remembering. I slipped off the ledge, and then the thing jumped to me because it was, of course, off cooldown because we'd all been in melee. So the second I left melee there, it jumped to me. You could see that was a lot of damage. If that goes off with any other cast on me, I'm dead there, 100%. But as I was saying, I'm not kicking the fireballs on those imps because they're just hitting the tank and he's totally fine. And you can see the rogue just did the same thing I did, where like that ledge that you can't see that well, he fell down and grappled up. So I'm not the only idiot, but we're both idiots. And then final boss, not a bad boss, as long as you do it correctly. There is a strategy that someone figured out a couple of weeks ago where you just pull Xavius and you parallel park him, they call it, in the corner. And the reason you do that is because in the second phase, when he's spawning these circles that are just constantly dropping, those are actually baited in two different ways. One is that they just spawn at like set locations around the room, and the other one is they are baited near players. And each time one of those swirlies hits the boss starts doing more damage. And so by like parallel parking him back up in this corner, none of the locations around the room that they can just spawn naturally, are going to hit the boss here. So the only thing that can hit the boss here are the swirlies that are baited on melee players. And it's not just melee players, it's any players, but range should not be near the boss in this situation. Just to be baiting more and more further away from the boss. And then like our outlaw rogue has pretty big range, so he's going to be standing max melee range to make sure that his baits are far enough away from the boss that it's not getting a bunch of stacks. And then when possible, I'm saving cooldowns. Like if I'm targeted by a Nightmare Bolt or a Feed the Weak, I'm Feign Deathing. Growing Paranoia, you don't have to press anything. Feign is actually really, really good on this boss because it will not recast Nightmare Bolt. If it's casting on you and you feign it and the cast doesn't go off, it doesn't just choose a new target. And then Feign is also really good on Feed the Weak because once it targets you and starts the channel, you can feign and it just cancels it. And Feed the Weak is a lot of damage. In phase 2 especially, I am 100% saving Feign for if Feed the Weak goes on me. And then every Nightmare Bolt that goes on me, I'm just using a cooldown, which I did not right there. I wasn't even honestly looking at my HP. I had the dot on me and I was low and I had gone to that website that I talked about earlier in the key. I know I'm going to survive by just pressing nothing in the first set. So I didn't, but it's because I wasn't looking at my health. So not well done by me. And you can see right here, the boss has 1 stack because 1 swirly hit him. And so now all of his casts, and now he has 2 stacks. Any cast here that hits you is going to hurt. And that's another benefit of using that website that I talked about is normally I've just always used Turtle for when the boss phases at 50% because I assumed it was like a big, big hit. It's actually not that big. That hit at 50% doesn't hit as hard as that Nightmare Bolt would have while the boss has 5 stacks. So I just use my 40% wall because I know that'll let me live through the apocalypse at 50%. And then I save Turtle for when that 5 stack Nightmare Bolt is coming at me because that would have hit a lot harder than the phase hit would have. But you can see I'm just staying out at range as best I can so that I'm baiting away from the boss. And you can see that the stacks are actually falling off the boss. We got really unlucky and it got up to 5 for a second there, but they fell off and now we're just at 2. And like I'm planning ahead right now. If I'm targeted by Nightmare Bolt, you can see there's Feed the Weak. Feign is amazing for it. You get 1 tick and then boom. If I'm targeted by Nightmare Bolt, I'm just pressing Fortitude to the Bear because that's what's next. And if I don't have anything after Fortitude to the Bear, I just communicate with my team ahead of time. I'm like, hey, next bolt on me, I need an external because if you wait until the bolt is midair on you, like obviously, oh hey, by the way, help me, it's too late. So communicate ahead of time in those situations. And there we go. Like it was a pretty clean dungeon. We had a couple of deaths here and there, but overall pretty good. And you know, everybody makes a couple of mistakes, so that's fine. You can see right here, Shaman died twice, Rogue died once, and then I died at the end there, and I'm checking like, wait, what the heck was hitting me? And it's because I had the Festering Rip dot on me, and I was just not used to like even considering that. Like I was kind of just zoned out vibing because the boss before it hits 50%. Like I said, I went to the website. I know none of that stuff's gonna one-shot me, so like I was just fully in the zone, just you know, spamming kill command, not a care in the world, and then I just get brutally gunned down by the boss, and I guess I had it coming. So I hope that one was helpful. Tried to give some tips on every boss, some things to watch out for on different trash packs, some tips about when you should and shouldn't beast cleave, and then how to prioritize your actual target when you're beast cleaving on bosses with the hitbox sizes. And I will see you guys all in the next one. I really appreciate you watching.